y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles. This is our TNA show for the week. Let's jump right into it. First off, we have Dixie Carter coming out, talking about the Thanksgiving theme. Brings out her new, I think she said COO, Rockstar Spud, which was meant with a bunch of apathy. He's not a guy that's crossed over well into America. We've seen him a couple times. We've seen the highlights of the British boot camp. Kind of a weird pick here. Maybe it's something to bring him onto the roster. Maybe it'll, build to something bigger for the guy, but kind of an odd pick. They could have went so many other ways there. But, again, like I said, could be just a way to bring this guy onto the roster. And that brings out her nephew, and for the first time in a TNA ring, Ethan Carter III and Dixie Carter, because the world needs the Carters. Which sends us to break. We come back with Ethan Carter III wrestling yet another TNA legend, this time Curry Man. It was fun to see Curry Man back. I always thought that was an interesting and fun character. Good that Ethan Carter picks up the win over what we're saying is TNA legends. Last week he picked up a win over a Shark Boy. I think he's, kind of these fan favorite guys. They're fun to bring around. Even if you weren't a fan when Curry Man was wrestling there, or when the Curry Man gimmick was being used, or the Shark Boy gimmick was being used, it's easy for a newer fan to catch on to somebody like that and latch on to them because they're just infectiously fun. Ethan Carter picks up a solid win, continues to step up the level of his competition. Now, speaking of level of competition, we had Velvet Sky versus Lady Tapa. Tapa picks up the win. I thought this was an okay knockouts match, could be a little better. Lady Tapa to me is a little bit green still for the role she's filling, and I'm starting to see why they're going with that bodyguard role a little bit. It gives her television time, it gives her screen time, while she could develop better as a wrestler. I think it was, decent match. In my opinion, probably one of the better ones on the night, but really it isn't saying much. There's only a couple matches on the night. Next up, a match that I thought was going to be stupid, actually came off pretty well. If you guys aren't familiar, every year they do a turkey challenge where someone wears a turkey suit. Both Jesse Goddard and Robbie E have done it in the past. On this night, their team, the Bromans, wrestled Norv Furnham and Dewey Barnes, aka the guys that have been wrestling Ethan Carter III. This was a good, solid comedy tag team match. I thought this was well pulled off. Furnham and Barnes looked good, looked better than they should have. They lose the match, they get the turkey suits on, and they dance around the ring. I thought this is what it should be. It was nice, fun entertainment. And which seems to be the way they went with this, understanding that this show, being on Thanksgiving night, was going to lose ratings to Thanksgiving, to early Black Friday shopping, to football. I mean, there were a number of things that took viewers away from this show, and I think TNA played it right by doing the kind of show they did. Now, speaking of themes of shows, our question of the week from last week. What do you guys think of the pay-per-view theme shows? Do you think it's time to go away? Before I get into my answer, we get our answer from our friend Metal Roller 45. They should not get rid of the pay-per-view theme shows. I think they just need to adjust the show to fit the 2-hour limit. Destination X did it correctly, and there were no filler match or filler talking segments. Everything hyped up the matches in backstage segments and videos to compare to Turning Point. They had pointless figures. Compare that to Turning Point. It had pointless filler segments, matches, and they did not need to be on there. And in turn, it gave Magnus and Joe in the KO match no time where people could really get into those matches. That's kind of where I was going at that. The last one, the Turning Point, was a disappointment to me. I mean, there was little to no build-up. And if you're going to theme the show and say this is a pay-per-view quality show, give me a pay-per-view quality version of Impact. I'm okay, like I said, this show tonight, I have no problems with it being a goofy show, based on comedy, based on silliness, just kind of a wrestling variety show per se. However, when you tell me pay-per-view, my wrestling mind is conditioned to think pay-per-view means important, means big matchups, means ends of feuds, beginning of other feuds, title changes, title retention, you know, all these wonderful things that we come to think of with the words pay-per-view in wrestling. However, they haven't delivered on the pay-per-view themed TV show. I really think, and Destination X was a good example, it was a good one. I think not necessarily they need to get rid of it, but revamp their thinking. If they're going to do these, cut some more of the fat out. You don't have to do one every month. Do one every few months. They already cut down on their actual pay-per-views from 12 months to 4 a year. Cut these down too. Build them up like they are a pay-per-view. Give new fans, and maybe some fans that are leaning on the fence, either have left TNA and stopped watching, or are thinking about not stopping watching TNA because they're not happy with the product. Give them a reason to watch. You know, set up a big angle. Set up a big, huge main event match. Something that we've never seen before. And then give that away as a pay-per-view special. Just my opinion. I just think it needs to be revamped. And if they're not going to revamp it and they're going to treat it just like a normal Impact match, let's get rid of the themed Impacts. Now, coming off of that, we have the Aces Maids Funeral. This is a segment that I think I might be in the minority on, based on what I've seen on Twitter. I wasn't a fan of it. To me, it was boring, contrived, it drug out too long. There were a couple funny jokes. The thing with not hand and angle, the beer was a little bit funny. The confrontation in the end with Bully Ray, it was okay. I mean, the whole thing, I did get a legitimate laugh out of Mike Tenay stealing the Brooke Tessmacher's shorts. That was funny. But the rest of it just seemed, it was too long, too contrived, too forced. We seen earlier in the show comedy that flowed naturally. Curry Man, the bromance in Farnham and Barnes. So on this, it didn't hit the mark for me. Based on what I seen on Twitter, I think I'm in the minority. Now, coming off of that, we had our 4-on-4 elimination match. Funny that happens the same week as Survivor Series. Also the same week that Ring of Honor on their television show put on a 4-on-4 elimination. But I digress. You had Team Rude versus Team Angle. Rude recruited Chris Sabin, Frankie Kazarian, and Christopher Daniels. Kurt Angle recruited Gunner, James Storm, and Magnus. And somewhat of a surprise to me, the heels win in a shutout. Magnus either faked an injury or got injured during the match, leaving Angle all alone, which of course he didn't win that. He gets disqualified. I mean, it was, as far as being worked, it was good. I don't understand the route they're taking with this, other than, you know, pitting Magnus and Angle versus each other at some point, and Gunner and Storm versus each other at some point. I didn't understand where they were going. It would have been better to me if some of the heels lost. Maybe Angle and Rude got a double disqualification. Sabin took a loss. Kaz or Daniels, any of those guys. But it wasn't terrible. To me, it was a little bit off. Which leads us to the final segment, Rockstar Spuds. And the theme of the show, all the winners got a turkey dinner, winner, winner, turkey dinner. You bring all the heel winners, Rude, Sabin, Kaz, Daniels, the Bromans, Lady Top and Gail Kim. Ethan Carter III left with Dixie Carter at a backstage segment. The funny thing coming out of this was Sabin not letting Velvet Sky sit at the winner's table since she lost, and, you know, after that the whole thing becomes a schmoz, just like we all expected. Anytime there's food in a wrestling ring, expect a food fight. The faces all come out. We end the show with a Thanksgiving food fight. Ended on kind of a high note on what could have, you know, was expected. But like I said, this show is not going to be highly viewed. It was not going to beat the, it wasn't going to beat the NFL. It wasn't going to, you know, there's a lot of people that were either eating Thanksgiving dinner and went to bed already, or were driving home from their family's Thanksgiving dinner tired, or went to their local electronics store or big box store to wait in line for Black Friday. So they knew, I think they knew going into it that this was going to be a low watch show. So they kind of put something that was fun and enjoyable. Didn't really affect the overall, you know, overall scheme of TNA, but it gave the fans that did watch or bothered to DVR it and watch it later something they can enjoy. And I'm not going to knock it for that. I'm going to go rated our ratings. We have our rating scale. If you've seen the show before, you know it goes from 1 to 5. 1 being the worst, 5 is the best. 1's a Jesse Goddard, 2's a Garrett Bischoff, 3's a James Storm, 4's a Christopher Daniels, 5's a Bobby Roode. I'm going to give this a 4, a Christopher Daniels. Like I said, just a fun throwaway show. The one thing I didn't like that I think I'm in the minority about again is the Aces and Eights funeral. Other than that, I thought it was fun all the way through. A little bit of confusion, some of the stuff, but to me it was interesting, it was fun. It kind of reminded me, and it's funny that I say this based on the question of the week we had, this reminded me of the old Saturday Night's Main Event with the WWE used to do, where it really wasn't, it didn't advance feuds, it didn't do nothing storyline-wise. Yes, they did that on Main Event, but sometimes they would just throw a fun show, and this was what this was. Now, speaking of the question of the week, if you noticed, I didn't put out a question of the week for next week. There's a reason for that. I've been doing the show for a little bit over the year, some with Gary, some on my own. Gary will be coming back, don't worry about that. But I'm going to take a week off. There's not going to be any of the weekly shows next week. I'm not going to do a TNA review, I'm not going to do a WWE review, I'm not going to do a Ring of Honor review. I'm going to recharge my batteries, I'm going to revamp the show a little bit. I think it's become too linear, and I'm going to come back with what I think is going to be a better format. I'm going to take a week to really iron that out, how I want to do it. I have some really great thoughts in my mind, and I want to just rejuvenate, refresh, come back basically better, stronger, more focused and dedicated to give you guys the best show that we can give here at Heel Heat. That being said, I hope you guys stick with us on our week of sabbatical. My name is George Coles, and this has been another episode of Heel Heat.